Here are the top stories for today, February 19, 2021. The Caraga region is bracing for Auring, the country's first tropical cyclone this year. A sigh of relief for the elderly, the government eases rules on their pension claim starting March 1. A lawmaker wants to tax online sabong to raise government income. And more than 500 athletes will compete in the Southeast Asian Games. Good day, I'm William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. Areas in the Visayas and Mindanao, particularly the Caraga region, are bracing for severe tropical storm Auring, the country's first tropical cyclone this year. Janice Cave has tonight's top story.
Various local government units in the Visayas and Mindanao are gearing up for the onslaught of severe tropical storm Auring. Agusan del Norte Governor Dale Corvera issued Executive Order No. 4 placing the province under Code White Alert. Members of the response unit of all disaster risk reduction and management offices in the province are now on 24/7 emergency operations. In Surigao del Sur, Tandag City Mayor Roxanne Pimentel inspected the conditions of families from coastal barangays who were preemptively evacuated. The city government declared suspension of work to enable residents to prepare for the country's first tropical cyclone this year. Meanwhile, the Philippine Coast Guard in Siargao suspended all trips for small vessels and watercraft due to gale force winds caused by Auring. In Lanuza, Surigao del Sur, rescue equipment have been pre-positioned while emergency numbers have been posted on social media as early as Wednesday. In Bacolod City, Negros Occidental Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office Head Jose Maria Vargas said they are ready to activate their disaster response plan. This includes coordination with village officials and deployment of personnel for rescue, evacuation, and relief goods distribution. Metro Cebu is also preparing for the storm. On Thursday, the city's DRRMO held an emergency meeting to discuss measures in preparation for the effects of Auring. Auring is expected to hit the Caraga region over the weekend. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Janice Cave.
The Coordinated Operations to Defeat Epidemic or CODE team, led by the National Task Force Against COVID-19 and the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, visited Metro Manila's lone town, Pateros, to check its preparations for its vaccination drive. Pateros Mayor Miguel Ponce said the local government targets to inoculate 51,935 of its eligible population. Ponce said the local government has already identified 4 major vaccination sites and 2 satellite vaccination centers. These are in AMC Gym, Pateros Catholic School, Agripino Manalo National High School, and Captain Hipolito Francisco Elementary School. Meanwhile, the 2 satellite vaccination centers are located at the Lexington Clubhouse and East Mansion Clubhouse subdivision. Pateros also has its own cold storage facility located at the Pateros Technological College. It consists of 8 refrigerators and 12 vaccine carriers. Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. commended the Pateros municipality's vaccination plan, which has a very low positivity rate of COVID-19. MMDA Chairperson Benhur Avalos Jr. says Pateros municipality is well prepared for the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. The country's vaccine roadmap is still on track despite limited access to COVID-19 vaccines. Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. said the vaccine rollout will push through this month despite delays in the arrival of the jabs. He said the country is expecting to receive 5 to 10 million doses of vaccine in the first and second quarter this year. This means vaccinators will still have enough time to undergo and acquire comprehensive training before the inoculation starts.
Sa ngayon po, ang definite pa lang po natin na ma-receive ay yung Sinovac pagka nagkaroon po ng EUA. Yung ating sa COVAX facility po hanggang sa ngayon ay wala po tayong definite date. Pero well prepared po tayo kasi meron po tayong kausap ng mga third-party provider at saka yung RITM, well prepared po sila sa kanilang mga tawag nating mga cold storage po.
Meanwhile, Senator Christopher Lawrence Bongo lauded President Rodrigo Duterte's immediate action in certifying as urgent Senate Bill 2057 and House Bill 8648, which intends to expedite the procurement and administration of COVID-19 vaccines. The memorandum order allows local government units to make advance payments even exceeding the 15% limit, provided they are authorized to do so by the chief implementer. Go expressed hope that local and national governments would be wise in spending the funds allotted for vaccine procurement, as President Duterte stressed the need to only buy safe and effective vaccines. Senior citizens no longer need to appear personally to claim their pension beginning March 1, according to Malacanang. The Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases ordered pension-issuing agencies, their servicing banks, and other financial institutions to adopt alternative modes of validation for senior citizen pensioners. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the IATF's directive was meant to protect senior citizens who are considered vulnerable to COVID-19. Meantime, Roque said the IATF EID also amended the provision on mass gatherings under general community quarantine. He said the amendment was made to reflect the businesses, industries, and activities that have been allowed by previous IATF resolutions. State insurer PhilHealth has extended the deadline for employers to remit their contributions for the applicable month of January until February 22. In a statement, PhilHealth said the deadline extension is in view of the technical issues in the electronic premium remittance system online payment module. The technical problem prevented employers from generating their statement of premium accounts or billing statements. It also noted that the extension is applicable to all employers in the private and government sectors nationwide. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Internal Revenue, or BIR, calls on taxpayers to avail of amnesty programs and compromise agreements to settle their accounts without fear of penalty. BIR's tax amnesty on delinquencies runs until the end of June 2021 to heed the policies under the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act. Relatively, the voluntary assessment and payment programs allows taxpayers to voluntarily settle their unpaid taxes with or without an ongoing audit or investigation. Interested parties will not be audited for their 2018 taxes. The whole country is one step closer to being under the least restrictive modified general community quarantine status. This, as Malacanang said, the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases and Metro Manila mayors both agreed to do the same. The government's economic team earlier recommended the shift to MGCQ status to balance health and economy amid the pandemic. But while the majority of Metro Manila mayors backed the proposal, Malacanang said the decision still depends on analytics and data.
Pero ang sinasabi nga po natin, dapat mabuksan na ang ekonomiya, pag-ingatan ng mga buhay para sa hanap buhay, pero hindi po tayo magpapabaya. Hindi po tayo papayag na hindi na natin ipapatupad ang mainting na mask, hugas at iwas. At titignan po natin kung ano magiging desisyon ng ating presidente pagdating ng Lunes, dahil itong rekomendasyon pong ito ay isa rin sa mga bagay na i-discuss po doon sa cabinet meeting.
To revive the economy amid the pandemic, the government's economic team is battling for the immediate transition of the country to the least restrictive modified general community quarantine, or MGCQ. But is it the right time to do it? We listen to the people in today's Boses ng Masa.
Para sa akin, GCQ pa rin. Kasi nga, hindi pa naman natatapos yung pandemic. Kung luluwagan nila, may posibilidad na tataas ang magkaroon ng COVID. Kasi yung mga bata hindi naman marunong magtakip ng maayos ng ilong. At saka, hindi natin masasabi kasi may panibagong COVID ngayon.
Gusto ko yung GCQ kasi Parang wala naman ng ano, kasi kami naman dito sa awa naman ng Diyos eh. Wala naman kasi inano naman kami dito, wala namang nagkaaroon. Basta kailangan mag-ingat na lang. Mag-ingat na lang tayo.
Dapat DCQ na lang muna. Kasi mayroong bagong lumabas na COVID eh. Mas lalong dadami yung lalabas, mas may posibilidad na mas marami pang mahawa. Kaya dapat DCQ na.
Yung GCQ na siguro para maka-recover na yung ating ekonomiya. Kasi ang hirap ngayon ng buhay, sobrang bagsak ng bentahan ng isda, sobrang hirap talaga. Kaya siguro para maka-recover na rin kami. Basta mag-iingat lang. Kailangan mag-face mask, mag-face shield.
Mas pabor ako sa MGCQ kasi paano naman po yung pangkabuhayan namin araw-araw kung hindi kami makakalabas. Ganon. Kaya mas pabor ka ako sa ganon. Tapos mag-face mask, face shield na lang, dubling pag-iingat na lang.
Para sa akin po, GCQ pa rin sila. Dumadami pa rin po yung kaso ngayon. Nabubuhay naman po kahit po. Nabubuhay naman yung ekonomiya natin. Kahit naka-GCQ po.
Still to come, a lawmaker wants to tax online sabong to raise government income. And Eastern Visayas needs 61 billion pesos to sustain the Balik Probinsya program in the region. More on these when the PNA Newsroom continues.
Alamin kung paano ang tamang pagsusuot ng surgical mask. Una, hawakan ang mask sa strap at siguruhing natatakpan nito ang inyong bibig at ilong. Tandaan, ang may kulay na bahagi ng mask ang dapat nasa labas. Ito lamang ang tamang paraan ng pagsuot nito. Ihulma ang nose piece o maliit na metallic strip ayon sa hugis ng inyong ilong. Iwasan ang paghawak sa inyong ilong at bibig. Kung marumi na ang mask, hubarin ito gamit ang strap at itapon ito sa isang basurahan. Siguruhin ang maayos na paghuhugas ng kamay gamit ang sabon at tubig. Ang surgical mask ay dapat gamitin ng mga pasyenteng may sakit sa baga o mga taong mayroong ubo, sipon at lagnat, mga nag-aalaga sa mga may sakit, at mga healthcare at frontline workers. Maaari ring magsuot nito kung kayo ay pupunta sa matataong lugar. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
The Manila Police District or MPD gears up for a rally in Legarda and Mendiola. The group pushing for the establishment of a revolutionary government and the adoption of a new federal constitution is set to hold a rally in the area on Sunday, February 21 and on Monday, February 22. MPD says that although the Interagency Task Force for the Emerging Infectious Diseases prohibits community assemblies in the general community quarantine areas, such as in Metro Manila, measures are already in place in the event of the big rally. MPD Chief Brigadier General Leo Francisco said they might be closing these areas to traffic or they will set up choke points in every entry point. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque earlier said President Duterte supports free speech even if the views expressed are against his. He said pro-Duterte groups pushing for a revolutionary government are free to publicly air their opinion. Meanwhile, the city government of Valenzuela has revved up its efforts supporting the national government's programs to end the communist insurgency in the country as it launched the creation of a city and barangay task force on LCAC. The newly created local task force on LCAC is expected to lead localized peace engagements in accordance with the nation's peace and development agenda. It also aims to prevent the left-leaning organizations from recruiting more members for the communist groups, particularly for the New People's Army or NPA. Local government units have provided computer tablets for students' online learning amid the pandemic. However, the Quezon City government found out that these gadgets are being used for a not-so-good purpose. Benj Mondok reports.
The Quezon City government is investigating how a tablet device it has given for students for their distance learning ended up in a raid used by some men for online sabong. Mayor Joy Belmonte said it was disheartening to see a tool for learning issued by the city to one of its students being used in illegal activity. On February 14, members of the Task Force Disciplina encountered a group of men drinking in public. Upon seeing them, the men tried to escape and left the tablet on top of the table, still turned on for online sabong. Based on the city's ordinance, any person who uses the device aside from the student or buys them may face appropriate penalties, including a fine of up to 5,000 pesos. Meanwhile, a lawmaker sees online sabong as an activity that could generate income. AAMB's OWA Party List Representative Sharon Garin said imposing taxes on off-site betting activities on locally licensed cockfights and derbies is expected to generate 1 billion pesos in revenues that can be used to aid the government's coronavirus response. On Tuesday, the House of Representatives passed on third and final reading House Bill 8065. The bill aims to clarify the national government's share of their revenues for off-site betting on these locally licensed games and to ensure that the government can look into their operations. Under the bill, the proposed tax shall be 5% of gross revenues derived from off-site betting activities on locally licensed cockfights and derbies and other derivative activities. Garin said the proposal is a much-needed shot in the arm for the national coffers and one that will lead to additional infrastructure, better social services, and wider indigent health coverage for Filipinos. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Benj Bondok.
Eastern Visayas, which ranks as the top destination for returnees, is eyeing at least 61 billion pesos worth of projects to carry out the Balik Probinsya 2 or BP2 program until 2023. The National Economic and Development Authority or NEDA in region said the budget will be used to sustain the livelihood and settlement of the BP2 beneficiaries. It will also focus on the infrastructure and development projects such as farm-to-market roads and the establishment of broadband networks to support agriculture and agribusiness ventures of the recipients. Launched in June 2020, BP2 aims to address Metro Manila's congested urban areas by encouraging people, especially informal settlers, to return to their home provinces. Dumaguete Bishop Julito Cortez has called on the lay faithful to get vaccinated against COVID-19. In his Ash Wednesday homily, Cortez said saying yes to vaccination is an act of charity for the protection of one's loved ones and neighbors this Lenten season. He echoed a decision of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines last month, supporting local government units in giving the correct information on the COVID vaccine to achieve the targeted 70% of the population for herd immunity. The prelate said his diocese will make available the church grounds and even its schools as alternative venues once the government announces the rollout of the coronavirus vaccines. Meanwhile, Cortez said this season of Lent, the people are once again invited to repent, return to the Lord, and believe in the promise of eternal life in the gospel. He said people should also be mindful of and respond to the needs of their neighbors. The Department of Labor and Employment in Western Visayas has released nearly 800 million pesos in livelihood and cash assistance to workers affected by the pandemic. Under Bayanihan 1, about 162 million pesos was released to 41,000 beneficiaries of the Tupad Barangay Ko, Bahay Ko Disinfection Sanitation Project and Tupad Post-COVID, while 207 million was dispersed under Bayanihan 2 for nearly 43,000 beneficiaries. DOLE also disbursed 273.4 million pesos under the COVID-19 Adjustment Measures Program for workers in the formal sector regardless of employment status. Meantime, over 15,000 displaced OFWs each received a one-time financial assistance of 10,000 pesos, totaling to 152.6 million pesos. The Overseas Workers Welfare Administration or OWA also implemented itabang OFWs and Abot Kamay ang Pagtulong programs to aid displaced and repatriated OFWs. Regional Director Cyril Ticao said the accomplishment is the fruit of the never-ending efforts of the department despite the lockdowns. Moving on to our business news, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas or BSP says a pandemic-induced asset price bubble in the country is unlikely. Bangko Sentral Governor Benjamin Diokno said monetary authorities do not expect any undue surges in asset prices, citing decreases in property prices for both office and residential segments. Diokno said property price and rent corrections were registered last year due to dampened demand brought about by the pandemic. Even before the pandemic, Diokno said monetary authorities have already put in place various measures to help prevent property price bubbles. These include putting a cap on real estate loans and loan-to-value ratio and monitoring tools like the Real Estate Stress Test or REST and the Residential Real Estate Price Index. Meantime, the BSP continues to closely monitor market conditions for signs of imbalances or the potential presence of asset bubbles. Up next, Malacanang is leaving the case of the rescued IP miners in Cebu to law enforcers. And more than 500 athletes will compete in the Southeast Asian Games. The PNA Newsroom returns after these reminders.
Alamin ang tamang paraan ng pag-ubo upang mapigilan ang paglaganap ng Coronavirus Disease 2019. Ugaliing magdala ng panyo o tissue. Kung uubo o babahing, takpan ang buong ilong at bibig gamit ang panyo o tissue. Kung walang dalang panyo o tissue, maaaring gamitin ang braso na pantakip. Kung nakararamdam na kailangan umubo o bumahing, agad na dumistansya sa mga tao sa paligid. Huwag dumura kung saan-saan, gumamit ng tissue at itapon sa basurahan. Ugaliin ang paghuhugas ng kamay at paggamit ng alcohol o hand sanitizer upang mamatay ang mikrobyo. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
The Department of Foreign Affairs warns any organization or groups extending financial support to terrorist groups listed by the Anti-Terrorism Council. The ATC designated as terrorist organizations the Communist Party of the Philippines New People's Army, Islamic State East Asia, Maute Group, Dawla Islamia, and other associated groups. The DFA said those extending financial support directly or indirectly to these groups shall be dealt with under the law. It also noted that assets of the group shall also be subject to investigation and/or freezing by the Anti-Money Laundering Council. Malacanang will not meddle with the investigation into the controversial rescue of 19 miners belonging to indigenous peoples communities from a university retreat house in Cebu City. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the palace would let the law enforcers look into the case of the rescued IP children. Social workers rescued the 19 children from Talaingo, Davao del Norte and different towns in Sultan Kudarat who were alleged to be illegally held at the University of San Carlos Talamban campus retreat house since March of last year. Police Regional Office 7 arrested 7 teachers of the Salagpungan Tatano Ig Canogon who were with the children. Following calls by lawmakers, the Commission on Human Rights, or CHR, launched an investigation into the supposed rescue operation on the USC campus. To this, Roque said the palace would let the legal process run its course. The Department of Social Welfare and Development is set to provide counseling and stress debriefing to the 19 indigenous people's children who were rescued from a university retreat house in Cebu City. DSWD-7 has prepared programs to address the needs of the young members of the Ata Manobo tribe whose parents came to claim them from their recruiters. It will also do a Parenting Capability Assessment Report, or PCAR, in coordination with the local government of Talaingod, Davao del Norte. Part of the PCAR is to determine the basic necessities of the IP children who are still in the city, like food, clothing, and medical needs. Meanwhile, the Regional Task Force to End Local Armed Conflict in Western Visayas slammed critics that claim as fake the rescue operation of IP minors in Cebu. RTF6 LCAC said the press statements issued by various groups criticizing the anti-human trafficking operations failed to mention that the minors' parents were the complainants and the aggrieved parties in the case. It also said the real cause of the problem is the Communist Party of the Philippines' New People's Army, which have forcibly taken away IP children and turned them into child warriors. It said non-government organizations, including the legal fronts of the CPP and PA, have no right to interfere in the affairs of the IP families. The provincial government of North Cotabato hails the military report that 13 villages in the province are now free from the presence and influence of the Communist New People's Army. Governor Nancy Catamco made the announcement after meeting with officials of Police Regional Office 12 and the Army's 10th Infantry Division at the provincial capital on Wednesday. She said the cleared areas are covered by the End Local Communist Armed Conflict, or LCAC program. 39th Infantry Battalion Commander Lieutenant Colonel Joffrey Carandang said more government services are expected to come into the villages as part of the interventions. Catamco directed heads of provincial government agencies to bring their services to the cleared villages and the remote areas of Arakan, Antipas, President Rojas, Magpet, Kidapawan, Tulunan, and Makilala. Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles, together with the Filipinas Contra Gutom, distributed free food packs in Zamboanga del Norte as part of efforts to fight poverty and child malnutrition. Nograles led the turnover of 2,000 food packs to Governor Roberto Uy, provincial officials, as well as local government unit heads from Dipolog City. The palace official encouraged the provincial and local governments to draft and implement programs that address the food and nutrition needs of their constituents, among whom are farmers, fisherfolk, undernourished children. Zamboanga del Norte is among 32 priority provinces included in the Zero Hunger Task Force. A total of 560 athletes may compete as part of the Philippine team in this year's Southeast Asian Games in Hanoi, Vietnam. Philippine Olympic Committee President Bambol Tolentino said the athletes would compete in 520 events in 38 sports from November 21 to December 2. Tolentino said the number was based on the Philippine team's performance when it hosted the SEA Games in Luzon 2 years ago. The Philippines netted 149 golds, 117 silvers, and 121 bronzes in 2019. However, Tolentino clarified that the 560 count could possibly be trimmed based on the actual entries by names. The Vietnam Olympic Committee has given the SEA Games teams up to March 21 to submit their entries by numbers. The Department of Tourism would recommend a one-day exemption for children below 15 years of age who are visiting Intramuros. Tourism Secretary Bernadette Romulo Puyat said she would suggest at least a one-day exemption for families including senior citizens. This after seeing several visitors, mostly families, unable to enter some sites inside when the area was partially reopened for the public. The tourism chief said she would suggest a 2-week study or pilot run for the one-day exemption before the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, or IATF-EID. The walled city opened the gates of Fort Santiago, Casa Manila Museum, and Baluarte de San Diego on Wednesday, February 17, but only for visitors aged 15 to 65 years old. Here's another look at today's biggest stories. The Caraga region is bracing for Auring, the country's first tropical cyclone this year. A sigh of relief for the elderly, the government eases rules on their pension claims starting March 1. A lawmaker wants to tax online sabong to raise government income. And more than 500 athletes will compete in the Southeast Asian Games. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head onto the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know from the PNA Newsroom. We tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day and happy weekend, everyone.